They say the ocean remembers everything, not just the tides, not just the storms, but the voices, the cries that never reached shore, the names spoken for the last time under an African sky, the silence that followed. Along the coast of Weda, the wind carries more than salt. It carries memory, a weight that lingers in the air, heavy, unseen, undeniable. Because this is one of the last places millions of Africans stood before they were taken across the Atlantic, into histories that would try to erase them. Centuries ago, this shoreline held no monuments, no markers, no explanations. Only footsteps pressed into sand. Only fear moving in quiet lines toward the sea. Only the sound of waves waiting. Men, women, children, forced forward along a path that ended at a place now known as the door of no return. But perhaps that name is incomplete because something did return. Not bodies, but memory. Not chains, but spirit. This is the story of Weda and a quieter legacy that endured alongside its trauma. The deep-rooted practice of traditional medicine, which became a source of resilience, healing, and cultural survival, adapting and evolving, but never disappearing. In Benin, healing does not always begin in hospitals. It begins in the earth, in the whisper of leaves, in the memory of ancestors. Here, traditional medicine is not an alternative. It is life itself. From the dense breathing forests, healers gather knowledge passed down through generations. Roots that calm fevers, bark that restores strength, leaves that speak to the body in ways science is beginning to understand. Every plant carries a story, every remedy a lineage, from the sacred groves of sacred forests of Ouidah, where towering trees are more than nature, to the waterlogged labyrinth further inland of locally forest, where nature is both pharmacy and sanctuary, to the mysterious currents of the Black River of Ajara, where plants and water become medicine. These sacred forests are guardians. These are places where healing and spirituality intertwine, where rituals call upon unseen forces, and where the boundary between the physical and the spiritual dissolves. Because in Benin, medicine is never just physical. It is deeply rooted in Vodun, a spiritual system often misunderstood, yet profoundly sophisticated. Vodun is more than a religion. It is a living connection between the visible and the unseen. Born in the heart of West Africa, it honors a supreme creator, the spirits of nature, and the ancestors who guide the living. In Vodun, illness may come from imbalance, from broken harmony between the visible world and the invisible. And so healing must address both. The healer is not just a practitioner, but a bridge between plants and people, between spirits and flesh, between past and present. In this world, a remedy is never just a mixture of herbs. It is a ritual, a prayer, a conversation with the universe.
My name is Josu Komet. My name on the throne is Mianon Gbeso Agbadogbe. I live in Cotonou in Kokokoji, and I am a traditional healer. I have been a traditional healer for 12 years now. I treat asthmatics, diabetes, hypertension, and women who can't have children. I can help them get pregnant. People criticize Vodun, saying Vodun is not good. We do not know that. Vodun is like God, Vodun acts like God. When you believe in life, this is what you obtain with Vodun. What we do with Vodun is good, and me, I will never leave Vodun.
Through ritual, rhythm, and reverence, Vodun preserves memory, identity, and healing, carried across generations, even through the rupture of slavery. And decades later, that same spiritual thread would help guide one man back through time, back to an era of chains, silence, and severed roots. In the 1970s, Alex Haley undertook a journey that crossed not only an ocean, but generations. Guided by fragments of oral history, family memory, and relentless research, he traced his ancestry across the Atlantic, back to West Africa. Not to a complete story, but to pieces. Names half remembered, places nearly lost, a past interrupted. Through his Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, and later the television series Roots, millions were introduced to a history that had long been fragmented. The history of slavery. Not as distant events, but as lived experience, as loss, as separation, as memory interrupted. While the story of Kunta Kinte is rooted in the Gambia, the forces that shaped his journey were not confined to one place. They stretched across West Africa, to coastal towns like Ouidah, Weda was one of West Africa's most important slave ports from the 17th to 19th centuries. It was also, and still is, a major spiritual center of Vodun. In what is now Benin, life was shaped not only by power, but by belief. Vodun is not just a religion. It is a holistic system combining spiritual beliefs, which include deities, ancestors, and spirits, healing practices including herbal medicine and far divination, and social order and moral codes.
Ici c'est vous, Dieu fera. Si quelqu'un fait accident, si quelqu'un fait accident sur la voie, c'est ici qu'on fait le truc.
This is the god of iron. We call it Ogu here in Benin. In Nigeria, they say Ogu Orisha. In Haiti, they say Ogu Ferrai. He's a god of mechanics, driver, all those people that do iron work. It protects them from accidents.
This story of Weda is also shaped by the work of scholars, such as Hubert Dosso Yovo, a leading ethnobotanist and researcher who has published articles on slavery, memory, and heritage in Benin. His research on Weda explores how Vodun rituals and memorial practices preserve the memory of the transatlantic slave trade. showing how spirituality became a powerful medium for remembering, interpreting, and resisting the legacy of slavery.
Apart from my work as an ethnobotanist, I also conduct a lot of research on Vodun in Benin. I have a lot of books dealing with Vodun, the importance and the implication of Vodun in the tourism management in Benin, how Vodun can be valued for the development of Benin. The aspect that should be taken into account while dealing with Vodun. I also published a book on the slavery period in relation with Vodun. I mean, during the slavery period, many people, they were captured in various cities, in various villages, and those people, while coming here in Benin, in Ouidah, they took with them the Vodun. I mean, the deities, the divinities, because of the cultural importance of those Vodun in their daily life. So, when we talk about slavery, there is important to focus on Vodun, because most of the Vodun that we find today in Ouidah, they have been brought by those people involved in slavery when coming here in Ouidah. So the connection between Vodun and the slavery period is evident.
To understand this story, we must travel further back in time, before the Atlantic crossings, before the ships, into the earliest civilizations, where systems of slavery first took form and evolved. Only then can we see Weda for what it truly was, a point of collision between an ancient, living spiritual world and the machinery of the transatlantic slave trade, where against all odds, culture endured, belief survived, and memory refused to disappear. Before the Atlantic slave trade, the coastal region around Ouidah was inhabited by the Weda people. Like many societies in West Africa, systems of servitude already existed. These included captives taken in local conflicts, individuals enslaved as punishment for crimes and forms of dependency linked to debt. These systems were not initially organized for large-scale export. But this balance would not last. As regional power shifted and coastal states began to rise, a new force emerged in Allada. The inland kingdom of Allada, founded by Aja-speaking peoples, became a dominant regional power by the 16th to 17th centuries. Before capture or displacement, traditional medicine was stable, familiar, and rooted in identity, supported by both spiritual authority and political leadership. Allada controlled trade routes, linking the interior to coastal towns like Weda. Early interactions with Europeans, including the Portuguese, Dutch, French, and the British, shifted trade toward enslaved people. Enslavement increasingly came from war captives, judicial punishment, and debt slavery. Under rulers such as King Kopon and King Tiabanlin, Allada controlled the flow of goods and increasingly people between the interior and the coast. These kings did not merely oversee trade. They regulated European access, taxed the export of captives, and shaped a political system in which warfare, justice, and debt could all lead to enslavement. Then came the rise of a new force inland. The kingdom centered in Dahomey, capital of the Kingdom of Dahomey. Its rulers would transform the region and its relationship with slavery. It began with King Hueg Badja, who established the royal line. Then King Akaba, who expanded its foundations. But it was King Agaja that sweeping changes came. In the early 1700s, Agaja launched decisive campaigns. He conquered Allada and then seized Ouidah, the vital coastal port. This gave Dahomey direct access to the coast, eliminating intermediaries. Under Dahomey rule, Ouidah became one of the largest slave ports in West Africa. Slavery shifted, no longer just a local system of incorporation. It became part of a vast Atlantic economy. The state became highly militarized, with organized campaigns to capture people. The monarchy tightly controlled the slave trade. The king held a monopoly over exports, and European traders operated under royal permission. Kings such as King Gezo later expanded this system in the 19th century. Wealth from slavery funded state administration. Military forces, including the famous female regiments, often called the Amazons, and monumental architecture, including the royal palaces at Dahomey. War, capture, and trade became deeply intertwined, and behind it all stood ritual. As people moved into the control of the Kingdom of Dahomey, traditional medicine became closely linked to state power and control. Kings relied on spiritual systems to strengthen authority and legitimacy. Priests performed rituals believed to protect warriors, ensure success in conflict, enforce oaths and obedience among captives. Healers and spiritual figures could prepare individuals physically and spiritually within this system. Medicine here was not only healing, it became political, strategic, and tied to authority, shaped by both royal power and religious influence.
They were still practicing Vodun when they were captured to be enslaved. I can give you one example. What we call here in Ouidah, Hevioso. Hevioso is in Yoruba, Orisha Chango. And the other name of Hevioso here in Benin, we talk about Adantom. And I will count a brief story about the name Adantom. It was a person, a great Vodun follower, who was about to be shipped to America. Okay? And this person was about to leave when the king, at that time the king, let's say the traditional king, asked about a person because this person had scarification in the face. And the traditional king was asking, where is, at that time, he was saying, where is the man with the scarification in the face? And they said, we already sent him to the boat and he's about to leave. And the traditional king asked them, please, can you call me the person? When he came, the king asked him, where is your Vodun? Because the king was informed that the man had a bag, and in that bag, it was the Vodun that the man wanted to keep with him going to America. And leaving such a person go to America was not good for the traditional king. So the person was asked to come back, not to be shipped to America. And when he came to see the king, the traditional king asked him, "Where is your Vodun?" And the man replied, "My adantor is in the boat." My adantor means my Vodun, because Vodun Hevioso, when you talk about Hevioso, it's also called in traditional language Fongbe in Benin, adantor. That is the way adantor came. So this is a story related to slavery, the slavery period. And it shows you that people were still living in Vodun during that period.
The slave route, or Route des Esclaves, is a historic path in Ouidah, Benin, stretching about 4 kilometers, 2.5 miles, from the town center to the Atlantic coast. It traces the final journey enslaved Africans took before being forced onto ships during the transatlantic slave trade. Today, it stands as both a memorial and a powerful educational site, allowing a reflection on the legacy of slavery. Key stages along the route include the slave market, Plaza Chacha. The journey began at the central square where enslaved people were sold. This was named after the Afro-Brazilian trader Francisco Felix de Souza, a major figure in Ouidah's slave trade. Here, captives were branded, displayed, inspected, and exchanged.
In Weda, we have on the slave roads, we have a sister step, and this is the first one. We call it the slave market. And this place belongs to Francisco Felix de Souza. He is Portuguese. He is the one that represents the King Agaja here in Weda. All this house that you are seeing around belong to him. You know, the biggest statue that maybe you saw in Cotonou, Amazon, it was here before, but a small statue. And when talking about Amazon, it's them that are fighting against the Kingdom of Oyo and the Ibadan, and they took a lot of victory in the past. I don't know if you watched that film, Women King. So the slaves, they will come from Abomey. From Abomey to here is 200 kilometers. Before they get here, they spend 3 months on the roads because they were chained. They chained their neck, they chained their hands, they chained their foot also. And it was completely difficult for them to go from there to here. That's why they took 3 months before they arrived here. Once they arrive here, you know, they mark them in that house that you are seeing there. They put the iron on the fire to mark them. You know, maybe you buy and I also buy. We have to brand them just to make the difference at the destination. That's why they brand them in that house before they continue. You know, it is only Francisco Felix de Souza that do his exchange here with a mirror, tobacco, whiskey, wash, all those cannon that you are seeing in front of this house, you know. For example, one little mirror, they give 10 brave men and 15 women for that. Just for 1 liter of whiskey, they give 16 men and 16 women. For all those cannon that you are seeing there, they give 21 women for that cannon or 15 men for that. That is how they do the exchange here.
The Tree of Forgetfulness. Enslaved people were forced to walk in circles around this tree. According to local belief, this ritual was meant to make them forget their identity, culture, and origins. Men, women, and children were often made to circle a different number of times. Men 9 times, women and children 7 times. Vodun priests oversaw the ritual, giving it deep spiritual authority. What may seem like a simple act, walking in circles, was rooted in powerful beliefs about memory, identity, and the soul. In Vodun tradition, rituals could shape a person's spiritual essence, not just their body. This forced circling was believed to sever ties to homeland, ancestry, and identity, marking the transformation from a free individual into someone bound for enslavement. Today the tree no longer stands, but a monument marks its location, commemorating the millions who marched through Ouidah.
The next step, as I told you, we call it a forgetfulness trees. Once a women they get there, they have to turn around 7 times, and the men used to turn around 9 times, just to forget their past, their culture, everything. But they do not forget, because when we went to Haiti, Brazil, Europe, and America, we still see black people, they practice Vodun. That means that they do not forget anything.
Zomai, place of no light. This was a dark enclosure, a barracoon where captives were held temporarily. The name means where the light does not enter. It symbolized the psychological and physical suffering before departure.
The next stop, we call it the darkness room. Each country, they have one boat, and that boat cannot carry all of them go to Europe and America. Reason why they stuck them in that house. They stuck them in that darkness room. And once you are inside the darkness room, you will not know where you are, because there is no light, there is no window. Even if it is night, you don't know. If it is a day, you don't know. They stuck them inside that darkness room for 3 months. Some people stayed there for 6 months. Some people stayed there for 9 months before the boats come back to pick them.
Slave cemetery. Along the route lay the slave cemetery, quiet and unmarked. Those who collapsed from exhaustion, disease, or violence were buried where they fell, without names or ceremony. The ground itself became their only marker, holding the lives that ended before the ocean was ever reached. For those still walking, it was a stark reminder that not everyone would survive the journey.
After that, we have the cemetery. All of them didn't support the way to go to the gate of no return. In the past also, they need all those strongest people that can work in farmer. For example, if you are lazy, if you are tired, if you are feeling sick, if you are not strong, they have a hole like 10 meters of deep. They throw away all of them in that hole, and they bury them alive inside that hole. We call it mine de lamentation, Songboji.
The Tree of Return was the final ritual before the coast. Enslaved people were made to circle the tree, a symbolic act believed to guide their souls. Vodun priests once again played a central role. Through prayers and ceremony, they called upon spiritual forces, reinforcing a powerful belief that even if the body was taken across the ocean, the spirit would find its way back home. In Vodun tradition, the soul could never be fully severed from its origins. This ritual offered a final, fragile sense of connection to homeland, ancestry, and identity, something the violence of slavery could not completely erase.
After that we have the return trees, and it was plants. In that time, the King Agaja plants 3 trees. This one tree was here before, and let us say 1 year ago, the big thunder, was raining, and the thunder, the god of thunder, fire the trees, and it fall down. That's why they planted this one recently, and all the trees was planted since 1727. Yeah, we have these trees, we have the return trees, the forgetfulness trees. So all those people who are strongest support to the way to the gate of no return. Once they reach there to the return trees, they have to turn around 3 times. And that means what? Even if they don't come back to the country physically, one day they must be back spiritually. I mean, the soul must be back to their country. Reason why they turn around 3 times before they continue their way to the gate of no return.
At the edge of the Atlantic Ocean in Weda stands the door of no return, a monumental arch marking the final point of departure. Beyond this threshold, the land ends and the ocean begins. Enslaved people were marched through this space and taken onto waiting ships just offshore, where the next stage of their journey would begin. For many, this was their last glimpse of home, the last sight of familiar land, sky, and horizon. What lay ahead was unknown, distant, and unforgiving. The door of no return has come to symbolize irreversible separation. From homeland, from family, and from identity. It marks the moment where the past was left behind, and a new, uncertain reality began. Throughout these stages in Weda, traditional medicine remained a quiet but vital form of survival and resistance. Along the route, during capture and the forced march, herbal knowledge was used to treat wounds, reduce pain, and preserve strength. Leaves, roots, and natural poultices were applied, even to burns and branding wounds, to soothe pain, prevent infection, and help the body endure. Such remedies were often the only form of care, even as many lives were lost. At the tree of forgetfulness and the tree of return, Vodun priests used ritual alongside healing knowledge, addressing not only the body but the mind and spirit. In the barracoons, where disease spread quickly, enslaved people relied on shared knowledge of herbs and healing practices to care for one another in the harshest conditions. And even at the door of no return, as they faced the unknown, these traditions endured, carried in memory, in belief, and in practice. Though bodies were taken, knowledge survived. Traditional medicine, along with Vodun, crossed the ocean, continuing to heal, protect, and preserve identity in new lands. Today the waves still come and go, but they carry echoes of footsteps, of voices, of lives interrupted but never erased. This road, is not just a memory of suffering. It is a testament to endurance, to identity, and to a truth the world must continue to face. In distant lands, the echoes of those who passed through this road live on. In language, in music, in resistance, in identity. They survived in ways history never intended, through rhythm, through faith, through the quiet, unbreakable insistence on being human. What was taken could never be fully erased. Today, people walk this path again, not in chains, but in remembrance. Each step is heavier with knowing. Each silence speaks louder than words ever could. This is no longer just a road of departure. It has become a place of return, a place where descendants seek connection, where history is confronted, not hidden, where the past is no longer buried, but honored. The door of no return still stands, but time has given it a new meaning. It is no longer only a symbol of loss. It is a call to remember, a call to acknowledge, a call to ensure that such a path is never walked again. Because history is not just what happened, it is what we choose to carry forward. And here, on this shore, where so many were taken, we are reminded of a truth that endures beyond suffering, that dignity cannot be shipped, that identity cannot be erased, and that even in the darkest chapters of humanity, the human spirit still finds its way home.